Today's a bit of a different kind of episode, so I thought I'd bring a bit of a different kind of intro to it. We'll be talking presidents and prime ministers in about a minute and 40 seconds. But first, our newest Lofi Poli Sci cut to unnamed things.
Yeah.
To unnamed things right there for you. With Michael Pickering right here for you, talking about our famous question, what's going on in the world today? And today we're going to have a little conversation about prime ministers and presidents. I mean, really, there's been so much going on recently revolving around these positions, but really all year long. I'm sure you've heard by now that just a few days ago out in Japan, former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe was assassinated. It's tragic. He was on the campaign trail for his former party, the Liberal Democratic Party of Japan, who's still in power, and national elections, they were this weekend. And from what I'm seeing, his party, the LDP, looks like they're a sure thing to win. Now, the LDP winning isn't a surprise. It's not a sympathy vote following the assassination. The LDP has held on to power for most of Japan's democratic history since 1950. Um, but you may have also heard this weekend, and we've been talking about it a lot lately. Things in Sri Lanka have really been getting bad as far as the economy, and the government has been trying to stop protesters and ordering states of emergencies and arresting people and calling in the military. But this weekend, those protesters took over the president's own presidential residence. Like, really, they have pictures of protesters swimming in the presidential swimming pool. The president and the prime minister, through their proxies, have announced they're going to resign on Wednesday. So we have to wait and see how this is actually going to play out. And the protesters are definitely watching. But the protesters, the people of Sri Lanka, have apparently toppled their own government. And now the opposition of the government is scrambling to put together an interim government until elections can take place. And you may have also heard, just a few days before these things in Sri Lanka, on Thursday of last week, the Prime Minister of the UK, yes, Boris Johnson, resigned. And for Thursday's episode of Country in the Spotlight UK edition, I recorded that on Wednesday night before he resigned. And when I dropped it at 6 a.m. on Thursday, I still didn't know the Prime Minister resigned. Um, but apparently, because of internal pressure from his own political party, and because of all the corruption and scandals that have been surrounding the Prime Minister, he resigned. And now the Tories, his own political party, are internally going to elect a new Prime Minister. And just a few weeks before that, the coalition government of Israel broke apart, lost its majority of legislators, and the prime minister had to resign, and a new prime minister was put in place as interim prime minister until new elections can take place. And almost 2 months just before that, back in Sri Lanka again, the prime minister at that point in time was the brother of the president who was just resigning. Well, 2 months ago, the protesters and opposition parties were hard on the president to resign, but the president didn't want to resign. But his brother, the prime minister, ended up resigning. And that was supposed to be kind of a show of good faith, and they appointed a new prime minister who was from the opposition to try and appease and calm the protesters. That new prime minister was the one who is supposed to resign on Wednesday. Oh, and P.S. We have no idea where the president of Sri Lanka is right now. After his residence was taken over, or theoretically before, he's been in protective custody, for sure. Just we don't know where. Probably no one knows where. And his resignation on Wednesday will probably be pre recorded somewhere. I'll be interested to see if this president doesn't go into self imposed exile. We'll have to wait and see. And a month before the president's brother resigned from the prime minister spot in Sri Lanka, we had that whole situation with the prime minister of Pakistan back in, well, starting in February, but culminating in April, where in April, the prime minister lost a vote of no confidence that forced him out of office, and a new prime minister was elected in his place. And just about 3 months before that, even less than 3 months, you had the military coup in Mali back at the end of January, where the military took over the country and arrested the president. And the military, almost 6 months later, still runs the country. And theoretically, the military is going to eventually transition back to democracy, but when that will take place, who knows? And the former president that was deposed, who resigned, I'm putting finger quotes on that, resigned from office, but he was arrested before that resignation. The military forced him to resign. Theoretically, the military has said that he's under house arrest, but we can't verify that. We can't go into a military junta government and say, hey, where's the president? And have him show us, you know? But all these events this year surrounding prime ministers and presidents, be it Japan, Sri Lanka, the UK, Israel, Sri Lanka again, Pakistan, Mali, and really more places than this, people. We're just highlighting these right here this year so far. But the world is changing before our very eyes. Though perhaps the world has always been changing. Maybe it's simply that our eyes weren't yet in focus. But now, Lo-Fi listeners, our eyes are focused. Perhaps now a better question is, what shall we do now that we can see? What shall we do now that we realize it's our world that's changing?